What's going on, guys? Today we're going to go into a deep dive into the DJI MIMO app, which is the new app for the Osmo Pocket. So let's get right to it. Alright, before we start this video, I just want to let you know that while I was recording on my phone, some of the recording, for whatever reason, got deleted. So I had to redo it. So if you see two different backgrounds, now you know the reason. So on this channel, I don't want that to happen, so I do apologize. But nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed the video and find it helpful. Alright, so you're going to connect the Osmo Pocket to your phone. When you connect it, the app will pop up. We're going to go over the app. So in the app, we're going to look over here. On the right side, you have all these different modes. You have time-lapse. In time-lapse, we can go up to the top and you can click on your interval, how many seconds you want that to be. You can click on the duration, how long you want the final video to be. The interval basically is the number of shots it's gonna take. So every 5 seconds, it's gonna take a photo. So the higher the number on the interval, the faster your time-lapse is gonna be. The lower the number, the slower your time-lapse is gonna be. I'd recommend like 5 seconds is a good spot, and maybe for 10 minutes total. And then your path, you basically can put your different points. So if we want to put it here, or for our first point, we can physically move the gimbal. We can put over here. And basically what we're doing now, we're doing a motion lapse. And then when we're done, we just press that, and then it's going to do everything for us. One thing to know about the time lapse, make sure you get the focus right before you start the time lapse. Slow motion, which zooms in actually, even though it shoots at 120 frames per second or 4 times slower, it's going to be much more zoomed in. All right, so that's normal video right there. As you can see, the slow motion at 120 frames per second or 4 times slower is going to be zoomed in. That's just the way it goes. By the way, that slow motion is at 120 frames per second at 1080. So in video mode, you can shoot up to 4K at 60 frames per second, but in slow motion, you can only do 1080. You have video, then you have your photos over here, and then you have your pano over here. So panorama, we can do 180. That's gonna do a photo. It's gonna take it, it's gonna be 180 degrees. It's gonna be not 360, a full complete circle, but it's gonna do 180, and it's gonna stitch all those photos together. So I wanna emphasize that DJI does the panoramas better probably than any other company, because with the DJI Osmo Pocket, it's so stable, the gimbal, the 3-axis gimbal, that you can do it a panorama handheld. So you can actually hold the gimbal, do the panorama, and when it does it, it will stitch it all together and it will look perfect. You don't need a tripod. With that said, you don't want to move your hand around. You want to keep your hand as still as possible when doing the panorama, but it's a phenomenal feature. So it does 180 over here, and if we click on that, we can also do 3x3. So it's going to take 9 photos together, 3 on top, 3 in the middle, 3 below, and stitch them all together. So that's panorama mode. And one thing to know, in panorama mode, not only is it going to do the panorama, save the final panorama shot, but it will save each individual photo as well for you. All right, so we're going to get out of pano. We're just going to go into normal video mode. And in normal video mode, anytime photo, video, you want to see your photos, you can click on the lower right hand corner, and then all your photos and stuff that you took will pop up. These are all the shots you took, photo and video. You can click up here and go to photo. Now these are only your photos. Then you can go to video, and these are only your videos. Obviously, if you want to look at it, you can click on it, and then you can see the video right there. And lastly, all the ones that you liked. Let's say I like this one right here and I want to like it. I can like it right there, and then I go to liked and I can see it. And then you can select certain ones. Let's say you want to delete some. You can go to select over here on the right, and then you can select the ones you want to delete and press the trash can to delete it, or you can heart all them, or you can download them, whatever you want. Okay, so let's go back into the menu. You can press on this little icon on the screen and just move it with your finger I move it with my finger. I can move it around, up and down, and all around, anywhere I want it. I can just move it with my finger. Now let's say you're moving it and you're like, I don't want it right there. Just above the red dot, there's a little recenter button. You press that and then the camera will recenter. If you want to see yourself, just press the upper right. Basically, if you press the upper right, it's gonna go into selfie mode. In the upper left, it's my battery life. And then an SD card, you can see how much time I have on my micro SD. I have 1 hour and 22 minutes and 23 seconds. Now I click on that home button. It basically has some tutorials there and DJI store, they wanna sell you stuff. But you guys have me, so I'll show you everything you need to know. So we'll go back into the app because that's what we're doing now. I'm showing you everything about the app. So we go back over here to Gimbal. We can click on the Gimbal icon here on the left, and we can do it 2 different ways. We can do this, we can fast follow, so we want to move it really fast. The gimbal, we're doing sports or some type of action that we have to move the gimbal really fast. And we can click on it slow follow. That's just kind of normal mode. We want to make stuff look real cinematic. We click on that. And we can do the different modes. So tilt lock, anywhere you bring the Osmo, it's gonna stay oriented straight forward. So you can bring it low, medium, underslung, or flashlight. It's gonna stay oriented straight. Then we go to FPV. FPV mode will change according to where you go. So let's say you're on a roller coaster, for example. If you're on that roller coaster and the roller coaster does like a 360, it will stay oriented for like a first person view. So it will go upside down and so forth. It won't stay level to the ground below you, okay? It will do circles and whatever you want to do with the gimbal. And then follow mode just stays sort of level. It just follows you wherever you go. So if you don't want the gimbal to stay locked in towards something, when you turn the gimbal to the left, it will go to the left with you. If you turn to the right, it will go to the right with you. All right, and those are the different modes over there. Now we go over here, we press on 4K 30 frames per second, and we can change this. So we can go to 1920 1080, and we can go up to 60 frames per second. Notice it says fine. In 30 frames, we can go super fine. It says shooting super fine video may cause the camera to heat up. So because it has such a high bit rate and it's using better quality, it could overheat potentially. However, I haven't had that experience, but I usually shoot in 4K, and right now it's at 30 frames. I want to do 24. So it took me a little while to figure this out, but basically in order to shoot at 24 frames per second, I have to go out of here. So I click on the screen, just anywhere on the screen, and then I click on these 3 little dots in the corner. When I click on that, you're going to see at the top basic or pro. What you're going to have to do is click on pro. So I click on pro, and then I'm going to exit out. I'm going to click on the screen again, and then I'm going to go down right above the 3 little dots. There's a 4K 30 frames, so I'm going to click on that. And then now I have the option, since I'm in pro, I can now shoot at 24 frames per second. If I click on that, I can shoot at either fine or super fine. Okay, I can also do at 25, 30. Now you notice I can do 30 frames, 60, 48, 50, 60, all in fine. But if I do 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second, I have the option of shooting at super fine. Of course, it tells me it might overheat. I haven't had that problem, but if you're in the United States, you want to shoot at 24 frames per second. And if you're in Europe or some other countries, you're going to want to shoot at 25 frames per second like that. But I would leave it at super fine. I've shot for a long time. I haven't had a problem with overheating issues, and I'm going to leave it at 24 frames per second so it looks more cinematic, and there we go. In the lower left hand side, those 3 dots, you have 2 different types of shooter. Whether you're just an amateur or a hobbyist, you can go to basic mode. If you're a professional, you can move to pro. So let's talk about basic. Basic, you can shoot in 2 different formats, MOV or MP4. MOV is more geared towards Apple or Mac users. MP4 is more geared towards PC or just any computer in general. We're gonna leave it on MOV because I have a Apple computer. Anti-flicker, I would leave that at 60 Hertz if you're in the United States. 60 Hertz in Europe and in some other countries, they use 50 Hertz. So just leave it whatever it is. I wouldn't really mess with that. And then the grid, if you want a grid, you can put that on. You can put that. Notice there's grid lines on the screen. You can do like the rule of thirds right there. You can use that for photography. Also for video is great as well. And on the bottom, grid lines and diagonals. So not only does it divide it into thirds, but it also has the X across the screen. So if you want to center something right in the middle, let's get this hat right in the middle. I can move it and now it's perfectly in the middle. So now I know the hat is in the center of the frame, and we can click off that if you don't like it. Now notice those grid lines are not going to show in your shot. It's just to help you out. It's not going to show in the final shot. And we can put our zebra lines or overexposed lines. Now notice it's not really, nothing's really overexposed. Let me move the light. You notice now, you see on the hat in the middle, in the white, you see those zebra lines? That means it's overexposed. You can see it slightly right now. The zebra lines, they help you out if you're in bright sun or a place where you can't really tell the exposure. If it's too bright, just put it in that and you see those little lines, those little zebra type lines across it, you know it's overexposed. So we're gonna turn it off for now. Now you go into Pro mode. In Pro mode, you have the same thing, MOV and MP4, which I just explained. Then you can adjust your white balance. White balance basically adjusts the color tone of the image according to the environment that you're in. So sunny, if it's a sunny day, or if it's a cloudy day, you could add that. It's gonna look weird if you're not in that environment. So we're not outside in a cloudy day right now. Incandescent, fluorescent, if you have those type of bulbs. And then you can custom white balance it. You can actually move, if I move it all the way to the left, notice it's gonna be super cool and cold. If I can just press plus to move it in increments of 100, or I can just slide it over with my hand all the way to the right to 10,000. It's gonna be super warm. Now, most daylight conditions are usually around between 5,500 Kelvin to 57 Kelvin. That's how we measure color temperature. I'm gonna put it 56, that's normal daylight. But since it's looking weird, I would just leave it on auto for most situations. But if you're a pro and you wanna use it, there it is. Or if you wanna create a very cold scene or very warm scene, there it is. Anti-flicker, we don't really have to change that. The volume amplification level, if we want our audio to be low, moderate, or high, we can adjust it right there. I'm just gonna leave it at auto right now because I use an external microphone. Our noise reduction, I would leave that on in most situations. In low light, this will help you, especially in the shadows. So I would leave that on. It may affect normal shooting. I haven't tested it enough to know for sure, but in general, I would leave that on. And then the grids, like we talked about before, the grid lines, we talked about that, the overexposed. Now the histogram is just this little like mountain peak. On the left side is your shadows, on the right side is your highlights, and in the middle is your midtones. So you can see we're a little underexposed. So if I move the light closer to the hats, you'll notice the mountain peaks change. If you're outdoors in a really bright situation, I would mess around with that. You notice it's negative 1.3 down below, so we know it's a little underexposed. Or you can look at the mountains on the histogram and we can move it around with our finger. It's a little towards the left side. It should be like a mountain range. It should go around peaks and valleys from the left side all the way to the right side. So we notice it's more towards the shadows now because it's underexposed. And we'll take that off. We can either exit out right there or just slide it over there. And the focus mode, autofocus center. So it's gonna be centered right in the middle, or in general, or AFS. AFS is autofocus single point. So if we click on that, we can just sort of choose where we want the focus point to be. We'll just leave autofocus center for now. I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, wait a minute, Brett, it's so underexposed, things aren't looking right. So if we go to the M right here on the left side, we can see both manual and auto. So if you click on the M over here, you can see your different shooting modes. Your shooting modes are either manual or auto. If we go into manual mode, we can adjust our ISO. Our ISO moves from 100 all the way to 3200. I wouldn't go past 800 max. All right, we can leave it at 400. You shouldn't go past 400, but if you have to, go to 800, but don't go higher than that. If we move it around, it changes, but let's leave it at 100. Now, if we're shooting at 30 frames per second, our shutter speed should be about double that, so it's 1/60th of a second. Notice on the lower down here where it says negative and positive, we can't change that, unfortunately. The only thing we can do, we can't adjust the aperture either, so the only thing we can do is raise the ISO, and now we notice it's a little better exposure. On the bottom, you can see 1/60th of a second. In your frame down here, you can see 1/60th of a second. In the middle, it says ISO 200 in the bottom here. And then in the bottom right, it says plus minus 0.7. So it's slightly overexposed, 0.7 overexposed, but that's not bad. So we go back over on the M and we click on that and we can go to auto. Now notice the great thing about auto is when we press minus, it goes down in stops of 1/3. So we can press plus and it goes back up. At 0, it's properly exposed. That's the camera's reading, all right? You have to use your own judgment. So maybe you want it a little brighter. Maybe 0 is not bright enough. You can do 0.3 and that looks about right. So we're gonna leave it like that. All right, so now that we've looked at all the video features, let's go to photo. In our photo mode, we can click on the white button just to take a picture. We can look at it here. Like I said before, we can see what we took. We can download it over there. Below that, we can heart it. And then we can put it in the trash can if we want. And we can just delete it like that. We have our photo features over here on the left side. We click on that. We can, if it's off, it's in normal mode. If we want to take a picture and you're by yourself, or let's say you're in an event and you're taking like a family photo or with your significant other, you want to take a photo, we're going to put it on maybe a tripod and then we're going to press 7 seconds. And then when we press the white button, it's going to count down. And when it gets to 0, it's going to take the picture. The Osmo Pocket, unlike the other Osmos, it only takes 1 picture. We're gonna click off. We're gonna go into down below into the 3 little dots. Here we have our menu with all our options. So in our menu, you can go to basic, which is for hobbyists, or pro, which is for professionals. You can shoot a different frame. 16:9 is just the length of our video. It's our entire screen. If we go to 4:3, 4:3 is more your custom photo settings. That looks normal. You could also do 3:2. Just depends which one you like. We're gonna keep it 16:9. Anti-flicker, I would leave that at 60 Hertz again. Just leave it what it is. Glamour effects. Glamour effects is supposed to make it look a little more glamorous. I guess if you're taking beauty shots or things like this, you can use it. I would just leave it off. I don't think it's gonna have that big of an impact. The grid lines, we talked about before, rule of thirds. It's gonna show up on there if you want. Or you can use the grid lines plus the diagonals. Now if we want to get it perfectly centered, we move it around and right there. I know because of that diagonal, it's right in the middle, the center hat. That's not going to show up in your final photo. It's just there to help you. Overexposed, like I said before, overexposure, you see all those zebra lines? That means those are the areas where it's overexposed. Notice they go away as it becomes properly exposed. Those zebra stripes go away. Overexposed, that those little zebra lines, they help you out if you're in the sun or a bright spot. They can help you out. Okay, your histogram, like we talked about before, should go up and down. Looks pretty good right now. Not bad. Maybe a little underexposed. We can X out of that. And then your focus mode, we talked about that before. We'll just keep an AFC. That was all for the Pro. And if you look up on top, the photo format, it does JPEG and it does JPEG and RAW. Now this really makes me upset at DJI. Why didn't they just give us the RAW option? Because most professionals don't want to shoot JPEG and RAW. You just want RAW. If you're an amateur, use JPEG, but professionals, we want the RAW. We don't want the JPEG there, but it's going to give us JPEG and a RAW file. So when I take the photo, it's going to give us both. That's the JPEG. When you download the card onto your computer, you're gonna see the raw file. That's it for photos. Now, if you click on the lower left, you can see the SD card capacity right there. I have 57.51 gigs left of 59.45 gigabytes. We can also erase our card, which is really important. Let's say we want to format that card. Click on format and press start. Yes, you should do this every time you put a new card in, and it erases everything completely, which we just did. And we see our current firmware right there. And we click on gimbal. We can do a gimbal calibration. It does that when it starts, so we don't really need that. I would just leave that on, and that's about it for photos. All right, so lastly, I want to talk about story mode. So initially, story mode was on the right side when DJI released the application for people who reviewed it before it actually came out to the public. But when they released it to the public, they got rid of it on the right side, but it still exists. It just exists in a different sort of way. So you used to be able to just record things on your phone from the right side, but you can't exactly do that anymore. So you click on the home button in the upper left-hand corner, and then you go to the plus icon. When you click on the plus icon, on the right side you see My Story. So there's 3 types of categories for story mode: scenery, travel, and life. Now the one I like the most is travel. And if you notice in the lower left-hand corner it says 6 shots and it says 20 seconds, okay? And that's for this one titled Taste Life. This story mode, this one says 6 shots, 20 seconds for brisk. And then over here for rhythm, it says 8 shots and 10 seconds. So in other words, if I wanted to do rhythm, I would need 8 different shots and it would last a total of 10 seconds. So let's try that one out. As you can see with rhythm, they're showing you an example right here of what happens if you use it. And it looks pretty cool. They add the little different transitions to it, okay? Now if you did brisk, notice the transitions there. They add the titles there and the transitions are a little different, okay? So each story mode has a different transition. If we go to Taste Life, you can see that. See how it's totally different, but it just depends what you want. So they last about 10 to 20 seconds each. So now let's see if we can create our own. So I kind of like rhythm, so I'm going to go into that one. And then I'm going to click on apply. So when I click on apply, now I can add the different things. So I'm going to add this one right here, okay? Then I'm going to scroll down. Let's say I liked this one right here. And I also liked, and then I liked this one right here. So then I'm going to go to next. All right, shows you what it's like. And if I wanted to download it, all I have to do is press that check mark, and then I press that check mark and it basically processes the video for me. Now I can create a topic if I want. Let's say I'm just going to put story 2019 and hashtag, that's the hashtag. Add location, and I'm going to make it public. So I'm going to press post, and now the video is uploading. The video is going to be uploaded to your phone. So now that the video is uploaded, I can share it with Facebook or Twitter or any other social media platform, Instagram, etc. And that's about it. That's story mode. And then if I want to see it, I can just go to my camera roll and look at it. There it is. Alright guys, I hope that deep dive into the MIMO app will help you use the Osmo Pocket better, and you'll be able to do all sorts of cool things. Love to see some of the things you guys are shooting. So if you shot something with the Osmo Pocket and want to share it, please leave it in the comment below. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe so you can get more videos like this. And of course, if you do find it helpful, press that like button. And before I go, remember guys, siempre pa'lante, nunca para atrás.